My wife, 34 female, and I, 40 male, were married for 5 years. We were both very active together, going on hikes and gym dates. We lived near the beach, so every morning we got to run together right by the water. The 7 years of our relationship were blissful. The only family we had at all was my MIL. She and my wife were very close. They had a good relationship, and I was thankful she had a good role model. I basically grew up on the streets, always kicked out of my stepfather's house. I had absolutely no family besides my wife. I really depended on her, but not as much as I depended on myself. I had no choice to become self-reliant, so I swore if anything ever happened between us, I would stay strong. No woman would be the end of me. Of course, I met some pretty terrible women, but I had no idea my wife would fail me too. Whenever I went to work, my wife would go on long-distance walks without me. Sometimes she walked 25,000 steps in a day. She could walk downtown, around a few blocks, and back home. Sometimes she stopped at the street vendors or the cafe for a treat. She usually texted me at least one little update or photo about her day, so I knew what she was up to and that she was safe. She started skipping some days, and I noticed. When I got home, she wasn't as excited to see me. She wasn't as talkative at dinner, and just seemed like there was something on her mind. I was already thinking she met someone. Something in my gut told me she did. One night, she was drawing something, but didn't want to show me what it was. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me, so I looked at my wife's drawing while she was in the shower. It was a perfect sketch of AP, although I didn't know that at the time. It was just some man I never saw before, but of course I was worried. As soon as she got out of the shower, I asked her who it was and added more questions onto that, like why she'd been distancing herself. She played dumb and said this was why she didn't want to show me. She didn't want me to worry about it. It was just a guy she saw on one of her walks. Since she'd been acting strange and just drew another man's face, I asked her if I could see her phone. She didn't want to give it to me and said I was acting crazy. I told her if she had nothing to hide, she could show me her phone and nothing would come of it. Instead, she said I was on a power trip and stressed about nothing. The sun was setting as she left the house for a walk. I tried asking her to stay, but she refused. She was gone for hours. When she came back, she handed me her phone. Of course, it was cleared of anything, but what I found interesting was that she said she was going on a walk, but there were only 500 steps on the app that day. So did she get in someone else's car? Or go into a neighbor's house? Just before she fell asleep, I asked her what she did while she was out. She sighed dramatically and told me she was walking the whole time. So I asked her if that was true, why she only had 500 steps that day. She was silent, but I could feel her lock up, and her breathing became weird. I really freaked her out when I said I pulled up her recent trips on maps and found an address. She started to admit she did get a ride with someone, but they dropped her off in some random neighborhood where she sat on someone's porch for hours without them knowing. Just then, her phone, on the nightstand, popped up with a message. She knew I was going to ask about it, so she tried to avoid that by taking it to the bathroom. I asked her to leave her phone with me if she had nothing to hide. She said she shouldn't have to do that and said I was being controlling. I told her I wasn't an idiot and knew she was seeing someone else. She was surprised that I said it. She started shaking, and I could see that her heart rate was through the roof. She admitted she had become friends with that man she drew. I asked if that was who just texted her. She immediately said no, that it was her mom. I asked if I could see it, and she freaked out. She said she was trying to be honest with me, but I wouldn't believe her. I asked again to see her phone, so, shakily, she unlocked it and quickly dismissed the new message to pull up the thread with her mom. I took her phone and went back to the list of messages, and only caught a glimpse of it before she pulled her phone back. It was too late, though. I saw it was from someone programmed as friend, and he said, "I want to have you again," which was pretty incriminating. When I told her I saw it and what it said, she was furious and didn't know what to do next. There were no words. She started packing her luggage in the hopes that I would ask what she was doing or try to stop her. I just let her pack until she broke down sobbing and asked me to forgive her. I asked if she was asking forgiveness for cheating, and she said yes. I told her I promised myself I would never forgive a cheating woman. She just started crying and packing all over again, wailing like this was my fault. She stopped once again to ask me to forgive her and forget about this, because she would never see him or talk to him again. I told her that wasn't going to happen, and she needed to leave. I had to call her mom to come pick her up from our marital home, because our marriage was over and she cheated on me. She could be heard in the background, freaking out and denying it. Her mother came, confused and disappointed. I was the one to load most of her stuff while they cried. Her mother told me she was sorry and looked at her daughter like she was a disappointment. I heard 3 weeks later that she was kicked out of her mom's for refusing to do anything at all. It's like she broke after losing me. Meanwhile, I bought a puppy and have started dating again. While her cheating hurt, it's not the worst thing that could have happened. I still have my heart and self. She didn't take me down with her. OP, I am so sorry your wife cheated on you. You noticed her behavior, but the most credible evidence was her app. You were very clever to check that. And even though she tried to clean her phone, the truth always comes out. Her phone lit up when AP messaged, and you were destined to see it. I am proud of you for deciding ahead of time to stay strong and refuse to let any woman bring you down. There's never a good reason to forgive a spouse who's cheated on you. It's a recipe for resentment, comparisons, and grudges. Once this act has been committed, it cannot be undone. A lifelong, happy relationship requires two wise, honest, and selfless individuals who understand that life isn't perfect and the world doesn't revolve around them. Find one person who suits you and vow to protect and honor them. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you for sharing your story. Now, let's get into our second story for today. My wife, 42 female, loved animals and worked with them every day at a pet store/rescue center. We lived over an hour away from a large zoo. I, 46 male, was surprised we didn't go to the zoo a little more often. We were only there twice, and the last time was years ago. Work kept us busy, so we didn't usually stop to treat ourselves or take any trips out of town. 9 years into our marriage, my wife started spending even less time at home, claiming she was working overtime because her boss was sick. Then there were other random excuses, until I just accepted that I could only see her just before bed each night and on the weekends. She always made me feel like everything was great between us, and she was happy with our relationship. One day, while she was at work, she texted me, "I can't wait to see you," but she quickly corrected it to honey. It was weird, because she never called me that. Even though it was weird, I didn't quiz her about it. I planned a surprise trip to the zoo and a place called the Garden of Eden. That morning, I woke her up with breakfast in bed and told her to call off, because I had a surprise for her. She was actually inconvenienced and said she would get in trouble for calling off. I asked how that was possible if she hadn't taken a day off in years. She was stumped, so she just gave in and said she'd text her boss. She was blindfolded in the car, but only for a few minutes because she was too anxious to play along. This wasn't going at all how I pictured. When she saw the sign for the zoo, she looked like her worst fears were confirmed. I asked her why she looked so upset, so she just changed her expression, trying to seem excited. When she got out of the car, I caught a glimpse of her phone's lock screen with the preview of her boss's reply to her call-off text. It said, "This is the 5th time this month." My wife had already called off work 5 times this month. I was shocked and confused. There was another text preview, but I couldn't read that one before my wife grabbed her phone. I didn't even know how to bring this up, so we just went along with our zoo visit. As we walked around and watched animals, it seemed like she was looking for something else. I saw her eyes light up when she finally caught sight of what she was searching for. She did everything she could to steer me in the opposite direction. I was confused and turned around, saying I knew she wanted to pet the giraffes. That's when a young man who worked at the zoo approached us, calling my wife by name. He was confused and looked hurt. He asked her why she was there and why she was with me. Talk about alarming. My heart was instantly racing, and I told him I was her husband. Her face looked like she wanted to cry, but she was too panicked. AP said she was his girlfriend, and they'd been dating for the past 9 months. We both looked at her, demanding answers. She just slowly backed up until she started crying and running away. He chased her, but I did not. I was in disbelief. My wife had lied about working to see AP. How many times had they seen each other in the past 9 months? I can only assume it was many, many times. I left the zoo without my wife. When I got home, I threw her stuff out of the house, since it wasn't legal for me to lock her out. She returned hours later in an Uber. That must have been an expensive ride. She tried to talk to me, but all I told her repeatedly was to get out. That was all I said to her, hoping to quickly diminish any hope she had that I would forgive her for cheating on me. She cried and wailed, telling me she had nowhere to go, and that AP dumped her at the zoo because he didn't know she was married. That's when I said, "Good, you don't deserve to have a man take care of you if all you're going to do is cheat." My wife didn't have anywhere to go after she packed her car with her damn belongings, so she called the boss that just fired her earlier that day and explained everything. He had an apartment for rent above the pet store, but since she'd called off countless times in the past 9 months, he refused to help her out of this. I just snickered to myself, eavesdropping from the window of the house. My wife just drove away and didn't reach out to me again, even through the divorce. I was kind of bitter that she refused to give me answers or show any more remorse for what she did, but I realized she was definitely struggling and suffering through the consequences of what she'd done. Her refusing to contact me actually worked out better for me, so I wasn't tempted to rekindle our decade-long relationship. I needed to keep myself away so I could heal and accept what happened. I got to keep our home and animals because AP sent me proof of their affair. He was so upset with her for leading him on while she was married that he wanted to help me prove what kind of girl she was. Losing the animals was even harder for my wife than losing me or AP. Let this be a lesson to all that cheating never pays off. It only makes you a terrible person that doesn't deserve the things you had with your spouse. OP, I am sorry your wife of 9 years started this affair. I know how frustrating it is to not have all the answers, but just remember these questions don't really matter. You know the end result, and that's enough to end the relationship. There isn't going to be an answer that makes this more forgivable. She probably met this guy on an app or at the zoo while you thought she was working. She is not a trustworthy woman. I don't know what challenges she'll have to face in life, but if she doesn't change her ways, it'll be a recipe for disaster. At least you won't be there for it, and you have a fresh start. A successful marriage always requires honesty, without any secrets. Your ex started talking to another person behind your back, which is never a good idea. There's no reason to keep any relationship or communication secret from your spouse. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.